Please read this disclaimer. This video's all the character and all of its contents, including any disease and opinions expressed by the narrator, are strictly for entertainment purposes only. Each person must make their own life decision and those decisions are theirs. Hey listeners, welcome back to another out-of-world news story with Unraveled Tales, where time itself unravels its captivating tales and reveals the hidden secrets of the past. Prepare to embark on an extraordinary journey as we delve into the depths of history and bring you immersive real stories from different eras. Today's story is about few months ago when Opus found out his wife was cheating on him online site. Wife tried to destroy his life. So Opus did this to her and she's family. See how? I hope you all enjoying this long story. Okay, let's go on to the story. Now I am not one who usually spends time at hot sites, but one July night a few months ago I not only looked at the content but signed up for their premium membership. I figured it was $100 well spent. I was watching a live feed of a very hot woman. I have seen better, but something about this scene really got to me. It was the woman, hot housewife Jenna they called her, but I knew her real name was Kelly. Kelly was my wife. Well darlin', that was pretty good. I bet your old man never makes you happy that good, does he? Hot housewife Jenna my Kelly grinned back at him and said without hesitation, well Mario, that was pretty good for sure as you say, but just so you know, no one lights me up like my husband. I have been with a few men but no one ever makes me happy like he does. You are good but he is fantastic, so don't quit trying harder. And she grinned at him again. Mario looked at her quizzically and asked, well, if he is so fantastic, why are you cheating on him by coming here and letting me play you? She replied without losing her grin, I didn't plan for it to happen, but I like to play and I am glad you play me. I also do it because I can get away with it and he will never know. I actually love my husband with all my heart, and after 3 nights here I realize how much better he is than what I get here, and it makes me love him and appreciate him all the more. Like I said earlier, the $100 was money well spent because I was able to see what was going on with my loving wife for a lot less than surveillance equipment or private investigators would have cost me. You are probably asking yourselves how I got here, what transpired before that night to make me go to this site. It's a good question, and I guess the most honest answer would be a fluke, a rare piece of good fortune that turned my way. Not good fortune that my wife was playing Mario, but good fortune in that I now knew she was cheating on me. Kelly and I have been married for just over 8 years. We first met when we were in elementary school together. We grew up in the area of a small-sized town in central Illinois. She lived in town and I lived out in the country. Her father owned the largest grain elevator in the area and my father owned the largest grain farm in the area. Because our parents did business together, it was natural that we would meet and go to school together and be friends. I won't bore you with the grade school crushes, the high school romance, or even the college scene. We both have dated and yes, betted other people. We had not been exclusive with one another, but deep down I guess we always knew that we should be a couple. I was indeed the one who took her virginity, but along the way there were others for her and for me. It was in our junior year at the University of Illinois that we decided to become exclusive, and some time later I asked her to marry me. About 1.5 years later, 1 week after we graduated, we were married. We both received degrees in business administration. Life was good. At least I thought it was good until that night in July. Anyway, let me continue. 3 years ago, Kelly's parents retired and moved to Phoenix, AZ. Kelly, her sister Amber, and her 2 brothers Tom and Carl Gentry bought 48% interest in the grain business from Tom Sr. He wanted to retain controlling interest for a few years to add his financial backing to their growth. Eventually, he would begin to decrease his interest until they owned it 100%. Amber is married to a friend of mine, Walter Swanson, who also happens to be a grain farmer. He operates a farm that is just a few hundred acres smaller than mine. We live quite close to each other and spend some good times with them. Tom and Carl co-manage the grain business and Kelly is their controller. Amber also works at the facility dealing with customers and processing grain sales transactions, etc. It is a true family-run business with a few additional employees, mostly truck drivers and grain handlers. During the peak of harvest season, they employ a few part-time workers also. I guess that is enough background, so I should continue with the sordid tale of how I discovered my wife ducking another guy online and what happened after that discovery. All 4 of the Gentry children had spent a huge amount of extra time putting together the deal for the purchase of the interest in the grain business from their father. I wasn't involved very much in it, but I knew that they had to bust their humps to get the deal done. There were bank meetings. There were meetings with the Illinois Department of Agriculture. There were meetings with insurers. All of them were burned out after the deal was done. Fortunately, this all took place during the winter, which was their slowest time of the year. For me, it was after harvesting time, so I didn't need Kelly on the farm as much as I would have during my 2 busy times of the year. She didn't actually do any of the farm work herself, but with 2,200 acres in corn and soybeans, both of those times are extremely busy for me and I needed Kelly to run errands for me, etc. You get the picture. So since we were not busy, Kelly and Amber decided they wanted to take a few days and go to a spa to relax and unwind. They booked a spa for 3-night gateway. The girls came back so relaxed and rejuvenated that they decided to do it again that July after the planting season was well over. The next year they booked another weekend. It was during that weekend spa visit that I was viewing the video online. Dan Marvel, the field agent for the Illinois Department of Agriculture in our county, happened to stop by during a routine tour of his area of responsibility. Kelly and I had known Dan in college and he asked about her and I mentioned that she was on a getaway at Peace Spas. Dan gave me a funny look and said that there was something funny happening there that maybe I would be interested in checking out. He said a cousin of his used to work at that spa as a masseuse and had told him some pretty wild tales about what happened there. He said they even had a website with a different name. He didn't recall the exact name but thought it had something to do with pleasures. I asked him what he was talking about and he cautiously said he didn't really want to go into it but that I should check it out. I am an internet poker. I go online and poke around looking for interesting stuff and occasionally. So that evening in question I did some poking around and I found Peace Spa. It didn't take long to find the live feed and the game was on. Now I can tell you all about what happened that night, but why? I was hurt, I cried, I yelled, I got angry, I got depressed, and I got everything else a man would get when he found out his wife cheated on him. I soon found out that it wasn't the first time she had cheated either because Peace Spa had an archive folder and I was able to find videos from the previous 2 visits as well as videos of the 2 previous nights Kelly and Amber had been there. With the premium membership I was able to download each of the videos for an additional $20 each. I downloaded the 2 videos from their first visit, 3 from their second visit, and 3 from the current trip. I downloaded 8 videos in all at a cost of $160. So, for a grand total of $260 I had all the evidence I would ever need to divorce my wife. I just didn't have a plan yet how I was going to do it. But I knew it had to start right away. I wouldn't wait a month or 2 weeks or even 1 week to bring it about. As far as I was concerned, the quicker we parted company the better. She had ducked another man a minimum of 8 times and I had video proof. Actually, she had ducked at least 2 different men, Mario and Steve, on the videos I had downloaded. I didn't know and I didn't even care if there had been more. 2 men was more than enough. I made a few of copies of the videos onto DVDs and put them in a very safe place. When my father built the house he had a wall safe installed with access through a hidden panel in the built-in bookcase in the office. Once the copies were safely hidden away I deleted all references to Nature's Pleasures Spa on my computer and deleted all of the original files on my computer. Other than the DVD copies there was no longer a trail to what I had as evidence. When all of that had been done I got my cell phone and sent a text message to Kelly on her cell phone. Kelly, this is Jack. I happen to know exactly what you are doing at Peace Spas and I have evidence to back it up. Don't bother to come back to the house if you decide to come back here at all. This house is no longer your home and soon I will no longer be your husband. We are finished. My lawyer will be in touch with you in the next few days. Arrangements can be made at that time for you to come and pick up your personal possessions. Apparently Kelly had turned her cell phone off and never got my text message until the next morning because I never heard a thing from her that night. But early the next day my phone started ringing. I could see by caller ID that it was Kelly so I didn't pick up. Soon I heard her leaving me a voicemail. Jack, what in the world are you talking about, honey? I have no idea what is going on there, but why on earth would you text me such awful stuff? Amber and I are packing up now and I will be home in a couple of hours. I don't know what you are thinking I did, but you are wrong. I will see you when I get there and then we can talk. I love you, Jack. A very short time later my cell phone rang too and again I didn't answer it but let it go to voicemail. Again it was the same message, almost to the exact words. I wondered if she had written down what she was going to say. When I didn't answer that call it didn't take long for the text message to come too. She was a broken record because she repeated almost verbatim what she had said in the 2 telephone messages. Since I didn't have to actually talk to her I decided to send a short reply back to her by text so she knew I got her messages but chose to not talk to her. I simply texted her, I wonder if Mario would have any idea about what in the world are you talking about, honey? If I asked him, why don't you have him call me and I will ask him. What I said about not coming back to the house I meant. Do not think you can come home, you cannot. It is over, Kelly. I didn't get any more texts but I did get another phone call from Kelly later that afternoon. She left a message, Jack, we need to talk. I am staying with Amber until you and I talk and put this awful misunderstanding behind us. Please call my cell phone and talk to me. That was Sunday afternoon and I did not return the call. Update. The next morning I went to my bank and arranged for a second safe deposit box in my name only. I put 1 copy of the DVDs in the box along with the original of my prenuptial agreement. I had made arrangements for a meeting with my lawyer at 11 a.m. so I had made an additional copy of the prenuptial agreement. He had one I was sure but I didn't want to take a chance that there would be any problem. At the appointed time, I walked into my lawyer's office and there sat Kelly. She looked up at me when I walked in and I could see that she looked like hell. It was obvious that she had been crying and her hair was unkempt. Kelly said to me, "Jack, we have to talk about this." I asked, "How did you know I was going to be coming here?" She said, "Richard called me when you made the appointment." At that time, Richard Warner, my attorney, came out into the reception area and asked us both to come into his office. My anger was seething beneath the surface, so I said, "No, Richard, we will not be going into your office together. You have broken my trust by calling Kelly and I need a straight answer from you right this moment. Are you going to represent me? Only me. You know lawyers are supposed to be so damn smart, but this guy must have gotten shortchanged in the distribution of brains because he said, 'No, Jack, if this continues I will be representing Kelly.' It turns out he thought that the grain business was a better client for him than my farm business was. It actually may have been because besides the grain business he had all of the Gentry family members too. I had my opinion on that issue and felt that he would eventually realize the error of his thinking. Fine, Richard. Please have all of my original documents in your possession and all copies of contracts and other paperwork of mine that you have available to me at 4 p.m. today. I will either stop in to pick them up or have a courier drop by to pick them up. I just want you to know that I have appreciated the work you have done for me in the past, but you are making a big mistake here, Richard. I will be seeking legal services elsewhere and my new attorney will be contacting you as soon as possible." Kelly had stood quietly during this entire exchange but now pleadingly asked, "Jack, why won't you talk to me now to clear this up? Because Kelly, it is obvious that Richard values you greater as a client than he values me, and I will not be having this conversation with you without legal representation, and I wouldn't trust him." Richard piped up, "Jack, you know I have always been straight with you, so you have nothing at all to fear." "Oh, Richard, I have lots to fear. You cannot serve two masters, so they say, and it is clear whom you have chosen to be the master in this. Besides, you have already proven you can't be trusted when you called Kelly in here. Goodbye, my attorney will be in touch." I could hear Kelly begin to cry again when I walked out the door. Shit, now I had to find a new attorney. While I knew that David Warner was a very able attorney and highly competitive with Richard Warner, I figured that might be a good choice, but I wouldn't dive in without doing some checking. Attorneys, accountants, bankers, and insurance agents are people you get into bed with, and you better really know what you have before you pull back the covers. I realized that attorney-client relationships are most crucial because they almost always have privileged information. I knew a few people who used David, so I called the law office and asked them if they had a list of references. The secretary said they did have a list and gladly agreed to email it to me. There were 4 friends of mine on the list, so I decided to stop in to see 3 of them and get their opinion about the work that David did. It really didn't take a whole lot of time because each of the 3 quickly gave me a glowing recommendation for David. There was no doubt in my mind that he would do a good job for me. I didn't go see the 4th friend because it was Wally and I didn't want to get him involved since he is married to Amber, Kelly's sister. I called David's office a second time. I gave my name and asked if I could make an appointment to see him after 4 p.m. The receptionist told me that he was busy until 4:30 p.m., but she would check with him and see if he could see me after that. I realized that there was a chance that he would not see me, but I had to try. When she came back on the line, she said that Mr. Warner would indeed see me at 4:30 p.m., but it would have to be a short meeting as he had other obligations in the evening. I agreed to that and told her I would be there shortly before 4:30 p.m. She said, "I look forward to seeing you at that time then, Mr. Hagen. By the way, my name is Samantha. I am David's wife." At 4 p.m. I stopped at Richard's office to pick up my paperwork and they didn't have it all copied yet. It was obvious that they had been stalling, hoping that I would change my mind. I have to tell you that I blew up big time and told them that I had better have every piece of my legal paperwork in the next 15 minutes or my new attorney would be contacting them. They asked me who that might be and I told them they would find out soon enough. Well, that office was bustling after that. I think they had 3 people making copies all at one time, and 20 minutes later I had every sheet. I still had time to get to David's office by my appointment time, so I didn't raise any more stink about being late on my deadline. I had my meeting with David and he agreed to become my personal and business attorney. I asked him if I could leave all of the paperwork I had obtained with him for safekeeping, and he agreed to put it in his vault until we had the time to go over all of it together. We set an appointment for the next day, Tuesday, at 9 a.m. to go over all of the paperwork and set a plan for my divorce. When I walked out of the office at 5:30 p.m. I smiled at Samantha and asked, "Well, Samantha, am I in trouble or are your evening plans still okay?" She grinned back at me and said, "You did just fine, Mr. Hagen. Our evening will go just as planned. I wish all of our clients were as prompt as you have been. But please call me Sam from here on." "Thank you, Sam, and you please call me Jack." The next morning we reviewed all of my business paperwork and contracts. I can't discuss it here though, you know, attorney-client privilege and all that. I can tell you though that David thought that everything seemed to be in order from the business perspective. We broke for lunch and David and Sam invited me to join them at the local diner. I agreed and met them there since I wanted to stop at my bank before we resumed in the afternoon. They were a charming couple and we had a very enjoyable lunch together. I found out that they were both a few years ahead of me in school. David had said that he actually was in the same grade as Tom Gentry but that they were not close. I guess they were both too competitive with each other. I found out that they had been married about 10 years and had 2 daughters ages 6 and 3. They showed me pictures and the 2 little ones were very pretty. They took after their mom too, I could see. Both had beautiful smiles just like Sam. I think that lunch did me a world of good. It made the relationship with my new attorney much easier to transition into. But the negative to the lunch was that I realized that my life partner wasn't there with me anymore. David and Sam were so awesome together and reminded me so much of how it had been with Kelly before I found out about her cheating. It just made me sad and a couple of times I know my eyes missed it up. David didn't notice a thing but I could see that Sam had noticed and got a concerned look on her face. After lunch I stopped at the bank and made a few changes to protect my assets. I also picked up a $5,000 check payable to David Warner Law Offices. It would be a retainer for the work they would do for me in the near future. David hadn't asked for anything yet but I knew he would appreciate the effort. I arrived back at the office at 1:30 p.m. to resume our meeting. Sam told me that David was on the phone and she took me to the small conference room we had been meeting in. She asked me if I wanted any coffee or anything else and I told her no, that I was fine. She sat down beside me in one of the chairs and reached out her hand to me. David didn't tell me what's going on, Jack, but I can guess what this afternoon is going to be about based on your reactions at lunch. I see you are wearing a wedding ring, so I am guessing it has to do with your wife. If you will allow me, I am going to ask David to let me sit in here with you this afternoon while we deal with whatever you have to tell us. I was on the verge of breaking down again, so I just nodded my agreement. My anger had tamed for the time being and I guess the emotions of the hurt were stronger now. It would be good to have a woman close by with the sensitivity they have. I realized I just might need the sympathetic presence of having Sam there. In the afternoon meeting I told the entire story about discovering Kelly's cheating. I broke down a couple of times and Sam stepped in to sympathize and comfort me. Once I regained control of my emotions I informed them of my intentions. Unless something comes out to change my mind I plan to file for divorce and to enforce the terms of the prenuptial agreement. David and I reviewed the prenuptial agreement in detail. The terms are pretty much as follows. I keep 100% of all farm assets, real estate and personal property. Kelly keeps 100% of grain business assets. Kelly gets 50% of our financial assets if there has been no infidelity. If there has been infidelity, Kelly only gets $25,000 for each year if she has been unfaithful, not 50%. Jack only gets $25,000 for each year if he have been unfaithful, not 50%. Household personal property 50% split regardless of the circumstances. Jack, I need you to show me the proof of infidelity. David asks. No, David, I have the proof but I will not show it to you now or to anyone else for that matter unless we are forced to go to court over this. Then I will show it to the judge. David insists. Jack, I need to see it to be sure we have a case of infidelity. I need to be sure. David, you need to trust me. I have the proof but I loved Kelly and I don't want anyone seeing what I have seen unless it is absolutely necessary. Sam touched David on the arm and nods her head yes. David reluctantly agreed. During the next couple of days Kelly called me several times and left me messages. I never took her calls and deleted the messages without listening to them. David called me and said, "We have set a Thursday meeting with you and I and Kelly and Richard." Update 1. During Thursday meeting time, I am asked some questions. Kelly. How she answer the questions will determine whether I pursue the divorce and on what grounds. Let's see an update. On Thursday at 10:30 a.m. David and I drove over to Richard's office to meet with him and Kelly. When we arrived I saw that Kelly's car was already in the parking lot, so we went on into the office. Richard's receptionist ushered us back to a small conference room where we waited only a couple of minutes before Richard and Kelly came in. Kelly looked a lot better than she had when I saw her at Richard's office earlier in the week. Obviously she had fixed herself up for the meeting because she was in fact beautiful. I did everything I could do to keep my feelings hidden because I didn't want her to see how my heart ached for her. She smiled at me and said, "Jack, I hope we can finally talk and get this misunderstanding behind us. I miss you and want to come home." I didn't respond to her because I felt my voice would crack if I said anything at the moment. I needed to get my emotions under control. It wouldn't be easy but I had to do it. David spoke up. "We are here to discuss the divorce proceedings for dissolution of Jack and Kelly's marriage. I believe we should open up the discussion, giving each party time to express their thoughts and opinions about how this young couple goes forward in their lives." Richard was nodding and interjected, "My client feels this is a total misunderstanding and welcomes the opportunity to clear the air and talk to her husband." I had been having a hard time controlling my emotions, but Richard did me a big favor. He ignited the anger in me again, and right now it was at the boiling point. I knew I could control the anger, and that made it simple to also control my emotions, my hurt and disappointment in Kelly. I would be okay. I said, "That is fine with me, Richard. Your client can talk to her husband." I looked across the table at Kelly and said, "Kelly, here are some facts. When we married, we signed a prenuptial agreement and we modified it 2 years ago when you bought into your father's business. I have brought along copies of the modified agreement for all parties to have." Kelly looked on in a bit of a shock. She quietly said, "But Jack, I don't want a divorce. I want to be your wife. Why can't we just get past this misunderstanding and go home and be happy again?" I pretty much glazed over that comment and continued, "Our intention was to protect individual interests while still reaping the benefits of our marriage. Originally, the prenuptial agreement was to protect assets held in my family over several generations. Then when you bought into your father's business, it was to also protect the same assets long held in your family. In the event of a divorce, our agreement clearly spells out that I will retain 100% the assets from my family and you will retain 100% the assets from your family. All debt pertaining to those business assets will accrue to the business and the other party will have no responsibility. Because we jointly work to provide our marital assets, our agreement calls for certain monetary and property splits depending on the circumstances of our divorce. As this document clearly shows, you are entitled to all of your personal items including clothing, jewelry, your car, and other items that a man would have no interest in. Likewise, I have the same entitlement on my side. All other non-farm personal property such as furniture, artwork, electronics, etc. is to be split 50/50. Farm personal property such as grain bins and machinery and equipment, etc. is to remain 100% mine as it is an integral part of the farming operation. The monetary distribution to you in the event of a divorce is 50% of financial assets if there has been no infidelity. There are 2 exceptions to that distribution in the event of infidelity, as you can see in the document. In the event that you divorce me for infidelity, the distribution would be that I get only $25,000 per year or $200,000, not 50%. In the event that I divorce you for infidelity, the distribution would be $25,000 per year or $200,000 total, not 50%. I am going to ask you some questions, Kelly. How you answer the questions will determine whether I pursue the divorce and on what grounds. Obviously, that will also then determine the outcome of any monetary distributions. If our marriage is going to have any chance to survive, Kelly, you must answer each question with perfect honesty. If you refuse to answer or I catch you in any lie, it is over. Is that understood? Are you willing to do that to have a chance to save our marriage?" Kelly had been sitting there looking totally stunned by my recitation of our prenuptial agreement. She quickly snapped out of it and responded, "Yes, Jack, I will answer your questions and I will answer them honestly. I love you and I want our marriage to survive. I will do anything to get you to stop this and allow me to come back home. Kelly, I would like to tape record these questions. Is that acceptable to you?" This time she hesitated a bit and turned to Richard, who had pretty much remained silent up until this point. Richard, being a typical lawyer, said, "Kelly, I would advise against it, but you do what you feel is important to you." With that, my lawyer, David, piped up, "Well, Kelly, I agree with Richard and would advise you or my client to not tape this. But it is Jack that has to be convinced here, not Richard or I, so do what you feel is right." Kelly said, "I will do anything to get past this misunderstanding, so yes, go ahead and tape this." I am okay with taping any conversation between Jack and me. David and I had brought along a tape recorder, so we put it on the table where all voices would be picked up by the microphones. Kelly asked, "Jack, what are your questions?" "Kelly, I want to ask you if you have been faithful to me, but I want to ask it in 3 different time periods. The first time period is from the day we pledged to be exclusive with one another up until the day we were engaged. Were you faithful to me during that time period?" Kelly smiled and said, "Yes, Jack, I was faithful to you during that time period." She thought she was winning points now, but her smile was quickly turned to shock when I said, "Well, that is lie number 1. You couldn't even answer the very first question honestly. I should get up and walk out right now, but I won't yet. Are you telling me you didn't duck Larry Evendale 2 days after we pledged exclusivity? Is that what you are telling me?" Larry was that kind of guy, Kelly. He had to brag, and he in fact bragged to me that you invited him over to your house on a Tuesday night when your parents were going to be gone, and he ducked you silly on your own bed. He told me before he walked away was, "Jack, she really loved it and I am certain that I will get lots of repeat performances in the future, probably even after you marry her." Now you probably could say he made it all up, but strange as it seems, Amber was nearby and happened to overhear it all. She walked over to me after Larry left and said, "Jack, Kelly loves you and she won't cheat on you again. Please don't do anything stupid." So you see, Kelly, you have already lied to me, but I can understand what you did even if I hated it. I am going to give you a pass on this lie, but there will be no more passes. From here on, tell me the truth or suffer the consequences. After that event, I didn't trust you, so I watched you like a hawk for the next 6 months. For that entire 6 months you did nothing to arouse suspicions in me, so I asked you to marry me and gave you the ring you have on your finger for the time being. I knew you were probably hoping that would come quicker, but I wasn't ready to trust you yet, so you had to wait. Question number 2. During our engagement, from that day you got the ring until our wedding day, did you cheat on me, Kelly? She never hesitated a second as she said, no, absolutely not. I knew what that answer was going to be because I said, well, I know that is true because you see I still didn't trust you totally, so I continued to observe you for that entire year until I felt I could trust you. I was almost certain you were faithful to me during that time. Richard, to his credit, asked if we could take a break. He wanted to confer with his client and give her time to regroup. He had noticed, like me, that during my tirade about Larry Evendale, Kelly had gotten very emotional and was on the verge of breaking down. He wanted to give her a chance to compose herself before we continued. We in fact took a break for lunch, and David and I drove by his office and picked up Sam and went to the local diner for the Blue Plate special. Sam asked how it was going and David said, I think Jack is doing fine. There hasn't been much come out yet, but he laid the groundwork for an honest answer for the marital period. If she admits all of it, he may still want to pursue the divorce, but he also may see that she truly wants to preserve her marriage. It will be a tough call, but I think he will be able to make it. Of course, if she lies, then Jack has to decide where to go from there. Sam looked over at me and her woman's intuition kicked in, and I knew she saw my pain. I gave a weak smile and said, this is not an easy thing at all. Why on earth do people do such stupid things and cause so much pain in their own lives and in the lives of those who they love? She reached her hand over on top of mine and said, if we only knew, Jack, we could bitch slap them before they could be so stupid. Of course that got me to laugh, as did David. Even in this difficult time I could laugh. I guess that is a testament to the resiliency of humanity. People grieve at funerals, but they also laugh. I guess people grieve at divorces but can also laugh too. I smiled at Sam and said, thanks Sam, I really needed that. She just nodded. Shortly after 1 p.m. we returned to Richard's office and the meeting with Kelly. Before I asked the next question, I reminded Kelly, you need to answer these questions with total honesty. If you lie in any way, it will be the end of this meeting and no hope at all for our marriage. Do you understand this? Kelly said, yes, I understand, and I will tell you the truth. Kelly, I asked, from the day we were married until this very moment, did you ever cheat on me? I saw the tears well up in her eyes, and I felt so badly for her because I knew how painful it must be for her, but I couldn't comfort her or let her off the hook. I needed so badly for her to care enough about our marriage that she would confess everything. I didn't know if I could stop this divorce or not if she told me the total truth. I would know, however, that if she told the total truth, she cared enough to try to save our marriage. Yes, Jack, I did cheat on you. I am so sorry, Jack. Can you ever forgive me? I asked that Richard and David leave the room because I had a few more questions for Kelly and I didn't want to embarrass her in front of those other men. They both objected, but I insisted that David leave, and Kelly nodded to Richard that she wanted him to leave also. I had her confession that she had cheated on me on tape. It would be all I needed in a divorce hearing, and I didn't want the rest of my questions and her answers on tape, so I turned it off. Kelly, answer these questions. When, where, who, and why? She sniffled a few times. Oh, Jack, I am so sorry. It happened this weekend at Peace Spa. One of the messers named Mario is who I cheated with. I don't know exactly why it happened, Jack. I guess just passions of the moment would be the best way to describe the why. Amber and I had been enjoying the day so much, and after a wonderful dinner we each decided on getting a massage before we went to bed. My masseuse was Mario. I was on the massage table in the room lying on my stomach. Mario started the massage and it felt so good. His hands were soft and yet strong. I have to confess it felt great and I did nothing to stop him. At that moment I had no idea I would get in over my head. With that she started to cry again. Oh Jack, if I could go back I never would have allowed it and we wouldn't be where we are now. You have to believe me. With that she started to cry again. Oh Jack, if I could go back I never would have allowed it and we wouldn't be where we are now. You have to believe me. Even though it was shocked me to hear all of this. Jack, I am so sorry and I don't know what to say, but please forgive me. Please. I sat there for a moment hoping she would go on, but she didn't say another word and just sat there with her head down sniffling. Finally she raised her head up and looked at me with a questioning look. Jack, is there any hope that you will forgive me? I didn't want to make it sound like we were in court, but in fact we kind of were, so I asked her, Kelly, is this the truth? The whole truth? And nothing but the truth? She looked at me with what I would describe as a weird look. It was a look of wonderment. It was a look that had a question but no way to ask it. It was kind of an I wonder how much he knows look. Finally she said, yes Jack, that is what happened. I am so sorry. At that moment my heart was breaking, and against all odds I was able to hide both the pain of her betrayal and the anger at her lies and keep my cool. I got up from the table and walked over to the door and summoned David and Richard back into the room. I looked at both men and said, this meeting is over. Update 2, robbery happened in my house. Detectives see evidence of a robbery but of course don't have a clue to what was actually taken. Let's see what happened in next. With that I walked over to the door and turned around. Kelly, I am divorcing you on the grounds of infidelity. The terms of the prenuptial agreement will be enforced. She was shocked and asked, but why, Jack? I confessed my cheating and I am begging you to forgive me and go on with our marriage. Please, Jack, please. I love you so much, please forgive me. Kelly, you lied to me. You didn't care enough about our marriage to lay it all on the line. If you had, I am not sure I could still have stayed married to you, but you never even gave it a chance. You had it all in your own hands and lied. I know you cheated more than the one time with Mario and I have the proof. I warned you that you had to tell the truth and you don't care enough about me and our marriage to have done that. It is over. I turned back around, opened the door and started to walk through. She screamed, wait Jack, I will tell you everything you want to know. Please don't leave me. I spun around once again and glared at her with all the hurt and anger I could muster and spat out, you were warned, you had your chance and thought you could get away with only one episode, so you lied. You had your chance, Kelly. And I screamed back at her, it is over. David hurried after me and finally caught up with me as I was getting into my car. He grabbed my arm and asked me, do you really want to file on the charge of infidelity? Yes, I do. She had her chance. Somehow I must have misjudged her all these years. I wanted her to care enough to confess everything, but she couldn't even be honest with me now. Go ahead and file. I drove out to our house, my house now, and grabbed a beer out of the refrigerator. Actually, I grabbed two and went into my office and sat at my desk and practically chugged down the first one. Then I drank the second one more slowly as I sat and reflected on all that had happened. I had multiple copies of the video downloads squirreled away in safe places, but I didn't think I would even have to make that public because I had her confession. My head snapped up when I realized that I had walked out of the office without the tape. I called David quickly and said, this is Jack, did you pick up the tape recording of Kelly's confession before you came running after me? Oh shit, I heard him say, no Jack, I didn't. I rushed out after you to catch you and I completely forgot about the tape. I am so sorry, Jack. I was so careful in everything I planned, and then because I was hurt and angry all at the same time, I had screwed everything up by charging out of there without my tape. Damn. Well, David, why don't you give Richard a call and see if you can run over there and pick it up? But my guess is that their answer will be something like this. We thought you had everything you needed when you left, so we just erased everything. Sorry. I will be shocked if you are actually able to get it. But don't worry even if you don't get it, because I have plenty of evidence to file for infidelity anyway. Okay man, I am sorry. I know you didn't want to use the video downloads and now you might have to if she fights the infidelity charge. Don't worry about it, David, everything will work out. After I hung up with David, I went to the refrigerator and got another beer. Damn, how could I be so stupid? I wasn't lit up, but I was feeling no pain as I sat and watched the evening news before going off to bed. I thought I heard a vehicle come onto the yard, so I slowly pulled myself up and out of my chair and went to the back door. I walked out onto the porch and saw a dark form moments before the lights went out. Something hit me on the back of the head and all I saw was blazing light, and then I drifted off into total darkness. I heard the beeping. I opened my eyes and looked around as best as I could without moving. I had learned my lesson from the first time. I saw a nurse sitting in the chair beside me. I tried to turn again slowly this time, but I couldn't turn. Hi Jack, I am Susan and I am your nurse. Please don't try to move, okay? Everything is going to be okay and I will explain everything to you, but please lay still. Do you understand me? I think something was jammed down my throat, but I was able to nod my head a little, so I nodded that yes, I understood. Jack, I need to go tell the doctor that you have regained consciousness and then we will be right back in here, okay? Again I nodded that I understood. It was finally dawning on me that I must be hurt and in the hospital, but I couldn't recall anything about how it had happened. I guessed that someone would eventually tell me, so I just lay there with my eyes closed until I heard them approaching me again. Mr. Hagen, Jack, I am Dr. Julius. You have had several injuries as a result of a beating during the robbery of your home. Now that you have come around, I am very certain that you will be okay, but you had to be restrained so you wouldn't re-injure yourself by excessive movements. I am sure you felt the extreme pain when you tried to move yesterday. Am I right? I had no reason to smile, but I know a slight smile came to my face as I once again nodded my affirmative to the pain. Yes, we should have been a bit more proactive on the restraints so you didn't have to go through that pain. I am sorry. I think we can take off the restraints now, Nurse Johnson. But Mr. Hagen, do not try to do anything on your own yet, okay? I nodded and also pointed to the tube down my throat. Yes, we can also remove the ventilator now. Nurse Johnson will do it. The restraints were removed and the tube was removed as well. My throat was killing me and I couldn't speak. I was given a sip of water and after a short time I could talk, but my voice was really crackly and it hurt a lot, so I just whispered. Will someone tell me what happened to me, please? Dr. Julius said. Jack, it is 7 a.m. and you have just regained consciousness and gotten off the ventilator. Your throat is going to hurt for a few hours at least, and we just want you to rest for now. Nurse Johnson is going to sit with you, and after you have had a chance to rest, we need to let the police know that you are able to talk. I will give you a while before we make that call so you can recover some, but you will need to talk to them and they will be able to tell you everything that happened. I can tell you that medically you have some injuries, but EMTs got to you in time to resuscitate you and we were able to reinflate it. You are actually pretty lucky, Jack. To put it bluntly, you have been beat up. We are going to monitor you closely for a few more days and then you will probably be free to go home. As promised, I had the rest of that day to rest with Nurse Johnson sitting close by the entire time. By later that afternoon I was able to sit up and with a great deal of assistance was able to use the facilities. Susan, Nurse Johnson, and I had some time to talk and I found out that she had been about 3 years behind me in school. Her name then was Susan Fisk and she had married Chad Johnson and she had a 3-year-old daughter, Emily. Apparently Chad was like Kelly and had been cheating on Susan, so she divorced him. I told her what had been going on with Kelly and of course she was quite sympathetic. The next morning bright and early I was entertaining 2 police detectives, Harold Robbins and Josh Carter. I asked them to fill me in on what had happened to me before they got too far into asking questions. Detective Robbins said, "Well, apparently it is a robbery that resulted in an on you. We found a 2x4 on the porch alongside you and it had your hair and blood on it. There were no fingerprints on it, so we assumed whoever wielded it had been wearing gloves. The door to your house showed no signs of forced entry, but of course that is because you came out onto the porch and the door was already open." He continued, "When we searched the house we discovered that a number of pictures had been removed from the walls. There was an empty strong box in one of the desk drawers, all the file cabinets in the office had been ransacked. The drawers and closets in the bedrooms had been searched and there were empty drawers and racks of a jewelry box in the master bedroom. We see evidence of a robbery but of course don't have a clue to what was actually taken." Detective Carter jumped in. "When you are able to go home you will have to look things over and determine to the best of your ability what has been taken. The doctor told us that it might be 3 or 4 more days before you are able to go home. At that time we will have you go over everything with us and we will update the reports." Robbins jumped back into the lead and said it was time to ask some questions. "What do you remember of the attack and what happened after?" "Well," I said, "not much, I am afraid. I had had a couple of beers and was watching the evening news when I heard a vehicle drive onto the yard. I got up to go see what it was about and stepped out onto the porch and saw the hint of a person kind of in shadows or darkness and then the lights went out. I cannot recall seeing or hearing anything else until yesterday. I am afraid I will not be much help in solving who did this." "Well," Robbins said, "I think we still need to ask you a few questions which should help us work through this. Where was your wife when this happened?" "My wife and I are separated. We are in the process of getting a divorce, so I actually have no idea where she was at the time," I said. "Tell me, Mr. Hagen, can I call you Jack?" "Yes, of course you can. Is your divorce going amicably or is there contention between the two of you?" "I guess I would have to say it isn't going well. She is contesting the grounds that I am planning on filing under." "And what grounds will those be, Jack?" "I am going to file on the grounds of infidelity. We have a prenuptial agreement and her settlement is significantly less under those terms of divorce, so that is what she is contesting." "Well, if I might say so, that gives her plenty of reasons to do you harm." "Detective," I added, "I just don't believe she would do anything to hurt me." "I can't believe it." "That's okay," he interjected. "It will be something we will look at very closely, however, to do a thorough investigation." "So are there any other people who might have a reason to do this to you? Do you have any business relationships that may have gone bad? Have you had any disagreements with neighbors or friends or family or any others?" "No, I can't think of a thing." "Okay, Jack. I know we will have to take a complete inventory of what was taken when you are able, but 2 things I want to ask about now. Did you have any cash in the house, perhaps in the strong box? And how much would it have been? Also, did you have anything else in the house including jewelry and artworks that would have had a significant value? I'm talking about thousands of dollars of value or greater." "Yes, there was some cash in the strong box. I would say it was upwards of $8,000. I usually keep around $10,000 in cash on hand, but I know I have paid some things out of it recently, so it is probably at about $8,000. There were some nice pieces of jewelry, but maybe only a few over $1,000. There was nothing else of significant value that I can think of at the moment." I didn't tell them about the hidden safe behind the bookcase yet because firstly the detective never mentioned it and secondly I was pretty certain that no one would have found it and I wanted to keep that a secret if at all possible. "Well, Jack, I think that will be it for today. If you think of anything, please don't hesitate to call me, and when you are ready to go home let me know so we can do that inventory. If we have any other questions we will stop by here or at your home if you are there." Over the next 4 days I got progressively better. I had plenty of nap time most days, but some of the time I sat and talked with Susan. I had several visitors including Wally, Amber, David and Sam. Kelly did not come and see me, and other than Amber none of her family came to see me either. I suppose that was understandable under the circumstances, but I would have actually welcomed the visit. Richard, Kelly's attorney, did come to see me. We had been friends for years before this whole divorce thing started and I was glad he had come. Everyone told me how sorry they were that I had been injured and wished me well. Both Amber and Sam kissed me on the cheek before they left, and they both had tears welled up in their eyes. I had some difficult times over those 4 days. Though I slept, I know that some of the time I was having bad dreams. I would wake up in a panic with my heart racing and felt tears in my own eyes. A few times when I awoke, I wasn't sure where I was, but it seemed that Susan was always there to soothe me with soft words and touches. At least one time I know I woke myself up screaming, but I don't recall any of the bad dreams or the reason for the screams. I found out later that she stayed at the hospital with me even when she was off duty and only went home to clean up and change clothes each day. She told me it was because of the events of my marriage that were especially close to her heart, and she wanted to be there for me. I really appreciated that too. Dr. Julius stopped to see me and let me know I was going to be discharged. I was happy for that and immediately started to get ready to leave. Susan helped me get ready and actually wheeled me down to the lobby and out the door where Wally and Amber were waiting to take me home. She wished me good luck and gave me a big hug. I know she really cared about me and I was thankful for her, but my life was in a turmoil, including my marriage and my health, so I didn't pursue any further relationship with her. I told her I would like to call her sometime in the future, and that was it. Final update: I found out who had beaten and robbed me. Finally, I have destroyed her family business. When I walked into my house, I could see the mess that was still there. Wally and Amber offered to help me straighten up, but I told them that I would rather leave it like it was for the time being until I had looked everything over. I promised them that I would call them to come help me when I was ready. They reluctantly agreed and left me alone. The first thing I did was walk into the office and check on the safe behind the bookcase. Everything was in there, including quite a bit more cash, certificates of deposit, and some stocks and bonds. It was obvious that no one had found the safe, or those things would have been taken too. The DVD of Kelly's infidelity was safely there as well. I looked through the rest of the office, and other than the cash, my laptop computer, and a few numbered prints of Wildlife by Terry Redlin, nothing appeared to be gone. I did notice that bank statements and credit card statements appeared to be laid out on the desk, so I am sure someone must have looked through them. I called both and alerted them that my account numbers might have been compromised and to be on the lookout for unusual activity. After a couple of weeks, the investigation into the robbery and beating was moving slowly because the police really had no evidence that would connect to anyone. Detectives Robbins and Carter updated me often on the status of their work, but so far no additional leads had come up. They did mention that because there were no high-value items taken, it was a dead end trying to trace things through fences like they do in some crimes. On their last call, they both pretty much indicated that it would be put on the back burner unless some meaningful evidence came to light. In the initial stages of the investigation, they had asked some serious questions about Kelly and me. I had been open and upfront with them in most instances. One thing I felt pretty strongly about was that Kelly wouldn't have hurt me, and why take things that she would have gotten in the divorce anyway. I guess the detectives agreed with that reasoning too, because nothing came of it. I had established new bank accounts and had new checks printed because I felt my old accounts had been compromised somewhat. Fortunately, there was no activity that I couldn't explain, but I still felt safer in establishing the new ones. I had purchased a new laptop computer and had reorganized everything in the office. I was back in business. I sat down to pay some of the bills that had piled up while I was out of it and came across a bill from Reds, Inc. A light bulb clicked on in my head for the first time since the robbery. RED stood for Remote Electronic Data Storage Solutions. I had video surveillance of my yard. It encompassed the house, the grain bins, and machine shed. The video feed went into the computer in my grain office out by the bins and dryer. Every night that feed was uploaded to Reds as a storage backup system. It was retained by them, and I paid a monthly fee based on the amount of data retained by them. Every month I would go in and delete the oldest data to keep the fees manageable. I hadn't deleted anything from the time of the robbery. I had video. I immediately logged onto the website for Reds and selected the day of the robbery from the archives, and I downloaded the entire day onto my laptop so I could view it. I was hoping that the quality would be good enough to identify who had beaten and robbed me. If it was good, I would copy it onto a DVD and give it to Detectives Robbins and Carter. That would get the investigation going again. As I scanned through the day, I realized there was nothing there that I would give to the detectives, and I knew now that they would never solve the crime. The rest of the bills were paid, and I started planning how I was going to move forward with the rest of my life. I decided to make contact with an old friend of mine from college days who worked for Cargill. Through him, I arranged to meet with the Powers to be in their acquisition department. It is amazing what people connections will do to make things happen. After about 2 weeks, I had worked through my plans with Cargill, and I took a little side trip to Las Vegas. I ended up flying to Phoenix because I had some business there. After 2 days, I flew back home and put all of my plans into action. I called David and had him call Gentry Grain to set up a meeting for me with Kelly and her brothers Tom and Carl and her sister Amber. I told him that he should mention that with the impending divorce, the grain reserves required by the state would no longer be sufficient because they wouldn't be able to include my grain stored there. I had David tell them that I wanted to sit down and discuss the situation with them and come to some resolution. I think David shocked them because they readily agreed to meet with me. I guess they hadn't given any thought to what would happen if my grain was no longer in the equation. I walked into the office and greeted them all. Hello Tom, Carl, Amber, Kelly. I guess you understood one of the reasons I felt we should sit down and resolve some issues. Tom started to say something, but I held up my hand and said, I think I called this meeting and I suggest you all just sit here and listen to what I have to say before you make any comments. I honestly think it will be in everyone's best interest if you do that. First, I would like to put this divorce to bed if you will. Sorry about the Kelly. I put the last draft of the divorce down on the table in front of Kelly and told her, sign these please. She said, Jack, I don't want a divorce. Whatever you think I did was not worth throwing away all the good years we had, and I wish you could forgive me and work through our problems. I certainly don't want to do this here in front of my brothers and sister. Kelly, we are going to finish this now. There is no tomorrow for our marriage, and the sooner you sign these papers, the quicker we can both get on with our lives. She got all red in the face and blurted out, well, if you must divorce me, I still plan on fighting the infidelity issue. That is the least you can do for me. I knew she would play that card, but I was of course ready for it. If you chose to fight me on the infidelity issue, Kelly, I will have no recourse but to put this DVD into evidence before the court. And I threw a copy of the DVD onto the table with the divorce papers. In case you are wondering what it is a video of all 8, yes I said 8, times you cheated on me at the spa. Amber's face turned brilliant red and she shot daggers at Kelly. You didn't. Kelly, how could you do that? You told me you did the same thing I did when approached and shut them down. How could you do that to Jack? Yes Amber, she did do that. She ducked Mario that first night when Steven approached you. Then she ducked Steven the next night. And on your second visit she ducked Mario all 3 nights, and on this recent visit she ducked him 3 times. So yes, 8 videos of you ducking Mario, and Steve ought to get my infidelity issue squared away quite well. Sign the divorce papers right now, Kelly, or I go to court with this. I am done messing around with you. I could see that Tom and Carl were also in shock, and Amber was quietly crying while Kelly signed the divorce papers. I left her 1 copy and put the rest in my briefcase. Kelly had a numb look on her face and there were unshed tears in her eyes, for what I couldn't be sure, but it didn't matter. I could see that she was shocked that I had the evidence to prove multiple incidents of infidelity, but she wasn't done being shocked yet. Now, let's move on to the other issue before us, the grain issue. I can tell you are all in shock by what I just told you, so I am going to make this quick but unfortunately worse. The bad news is that with this divorce you will no longer have the value of my stored grain included with your reserves and will be in violation of your grain license and your loan covenants. The good news is that I went to your father and presented my case to him, and he agreed to sell me his 52% interest in the business. Your agreement with him had no clause for first right of refusal, so I guess Richard didn't do the best job for you in the purchase after all. I didn't show him evidence of your cheating, but he believed that I had it, so to him this was a no-brainer. He knew the company would be in trouble without my equity, so he sold me his stock, and now I am the majority shareholder in Gentry Grain, Inc. You each own 12% and as a group are in the minority position with 48%. The bad news is that I have negotiated a deal to sell my controlling interest in Gentry Grain to Cargill. They are always on the lookout for up-and-coming grain operations, and Gentry Grain fills the bill at the right price. The good news is that you have the option to sell your shares to them for the same price I negotiated with them. It is my recommendation that you do that. I negotiated a very good price. The bad news is that now your company is owned by someone else and they will be evaluating personnel to see who adds value to the company. The good news is that as part of my negotiations you each have 1 year guaranteed employment. During that time I highly recommend that you bust your asses to prove to them that you are a valuable employee. Just so you know, I have also sold my farm to them, and Wally has sold his farm to them as well. Wally has signed a long-term contract with Cargill to manage both farms, and we all know what a great job he does and will do for them. The shock I had noted on all of their faces deepened and took on a degree of rage as well. Tom, being the oldest and the unofficial leader of the Gentry clan, was the first to actually speak. What the hell have you done, Jack? You have destroyed this family business because my sister cheated on you. What kind of man are you anyway? How did you get my father to sell you his stock? What kind of lies did you tell him? I tell you what, Tom, I said. First, your father sold me his stock to keep you out of jail, to keep Carl out of jail, and to keep Kelly out of jail. You ask what kind of man I am, but you should be asking yourself what kind of man you are, what kind of man your brother is, and what kind of woman your sister is. I tossed the second DVD out onto the middle of the table. I think this video will give you all the answers you need as to why this is all happening. It clearly shows your pickup on my yard the night I was beaten. It clearly shows you and Carl beating me. It clearly shows you coming out of my house with my belongings. Consider yourselves lucky that I chose this route of revenge instead of turning this over to Detectives Robbins and Carter. Kelly finally spoke up. Jack, how can you do this to me? Kelly, you are another case altogether. With you I feel like I wasted my whole life. Your father always treated my dad well enough, but always kind of like a second-class dumb farm boy. Tom and Carl treated me very much the same way, always thinking you were too good for the likes of me. You were my best friend, but you also considered yourself better than me in many ways. I could always tell. You were a deceitful lover. You promised to be exclusive with me and immediately slept with Larry Evendale. You were a cheating wife, disrespecting me and our marriage by ducking those men. When you watch that video, remember that I saw every second and I heard every word. And worst of all, Kelly, you are a lousy best friend. You know I almost died in the attack. You, Kelly, almost killed the man you say you love so much. I would call that being a pretty rotten friend, don't you think? Kelly had fainted. Amber and Carl rushed to her to catch her before she fell out of her chair. Then Amber went and got a cold cloth to help revive her. When she was conscious again, I took my final shot. So you now know your father sold me his stock to keep all three of you out of jail. He isn't very proud of his children, you know, except you, Amber, and I am sure you will hear plenty about that in the future. Like I said before, I believe I have wasted most of my life on you, Kelly, but I won't be wasting any more of my future. Have a great life. With that, I walked out the door with all deals done. I was free to move on, and I would. The end. Thank you for joining us on Unraveled Tales, where time itself unravels its captivating tales and reveals the hidden secrets of the past. Prepare to embark on an extraordinary journey as we delve into the depths of history, Reddit stories, bringing you riveting and immersive real stories from different eras. Remember, this channel exists because of your support, and I want it to be a place where we can all come together, learn, and have a great time. Your feedback is vital, and I appreciate every single suggestion and comment you provide. Thank you once again for being such an amazing audience. We encourage you to subscribe to our channel and stay connected with our community. I look forward to reading your valuable advice and working together to make our YouTube channel the best it can be.